Hello, and welcome to New Life. Thank you for joining us today. We're glad you're taking time to listen to this week's message. We hope that this resource helps you to know God, find freedom, discover purpose, and make an impact. Enjoy the content.
How are we feeling? Okay, I heard one like it was audible. It's like a little holiday hangover. I'm tired, but I'm happy because Clemson won last night. So it was a good day. I was really upset in the first quarter. If you don't like football, just let me indulge myself for a minute. I was really upset in the first quarter. I threw my phone probably 3 times. And my wife was like, "What's wrong with you?" I was like, "They're losing really bad. They were down 16-0. And she was like, "They always win. Don't worry about it." And I was like, "I am going to worry about it. Leave me alone." And turns out they won, and she was right. I'm not going to count on her being right every time. She is a Redskins fan, so I'm just saying. So anyway, man. So yeah, I was up late, but it was totally worth it. Man. Okay, so I was told a long time ago, well, not a long time ago, like, I don't know, about a year ago, that if I preach, I have to have a Nora story in my sermon. And I don't have any, so let me just tell you this to start out. Y'all go with that? Everybody? So Nora's my daughter, and so she's a year old, and she's like a year old going on 12. And she's already got all the attitude and everything else, but we went to North Carolina. For the holidays, we went down to North Carolina it was just a day, but so on the way down, she was perfect. It was insane. Like the whole ride, she was good. She didn't cry, nothing. And then we came home the next day. And look, we made it from North Carolina back home in like 5 hours and 15 minutes. Now, in case you're wondering if I was speeding the whole time, I was not. We only stopped once. I don't know if that's child abuse or like I'm super dad, but we only stopped once. And it was awesome until we got to Richmond. And then she cried for an hour. It was insane. You guys know Baby Shark? So we're trying everything, and we pulled up Baby Shark, because she likes that, and there's an hour loop on YouTube of the song, and yeah, they use that for torture, and so we put that, we had that running, and it worked for about 5 minutes, and then she was like, "Wait, I'm still in this car seat," and started screaming again, and it was just wah. And then we got to the Potomac River Bridge, and she promptly fell asleep. She went from screaming to sleeping. It was insane. But we made it home. And, so we're going to talk about change. That story is actually pertinent because there are people who like change, and those people get really excited about it. And then there are people who hate change, and they kind of act like my daughter in the car when things change. Scream and scream and scream until they realize it's okay, or this is just how it's going to be, you know? And whether you're one or the other, it doesn't really matter. Life changes either way. And pastors do this tricky little thing where we like to talk about change around times where you're open to change. You know what I mean? It makes sense to do that. But if you've been in church for any period of time, you'll realize that at the beginning of the year, most often, is some sermon series about life change or how to be better in the next. You know what I'm talking about? It's like a felt need type series of sermons. It's usually only a few weeks long because that's as long as you're going to the gym at the beginning of the year. So we time it out real good. You know what I mean? And that's the way it goes. And so we actually have one of those coming up. Surprise. And and that one's going to be called Waiting for Change. Look, here's the idea is change doesn't happen if God's not moving. And so what we're gonna do in that series is drive to prayer and fasting. That'll start on January 19th. So we're gonna drive to a period of prayer and fasting because, man, we wanna see God move in new ways in our lives next year. And so that's what we're doing. But we're still in this series called More Than a Moment. So what I was trying to do, and we ended up all writing our own sermons for this one because of just a breakdown in the calendar. So what I'm trying to do is tie last series to next series. We'll see how it goes. But we're going to be talking about change because, look, New Year's is coming, and y'all already got your diet plan picked out. You've been scouting out how much gym memberships cost. You're getting ready for your 1,500th last cigarette. Right? It's coming. And that's where we're headed. But I think maybe God has more in mind than a skinnier, healthier you for next year. I think he has bigger plans, but let's just talk. We're going to be in John chapter 21. I'm going to read for a minute. Excuse me while I stumble a little bit. I listen to books, so I'm not always the best reader, but we're going to go for it. John chapter 21. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. How bad would it stink to be those 2 other disciples? Everybody else got named, man. Messed up. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them, and they said, we'll go with you. So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? No, they answered. Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. When they did, they were unable to haul in the net because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. As soon as Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you have just caught. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153, but even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples dared to ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them and did the same with the fish. This is now the 3rd time Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. So, give you a little context, right? Jesus has already gone to the cross. So the series started in Genesis, and now we're here. We traveled a long way, and so Jesus he's gone to the cross. He died. He raised again, and so his disciples, they're a little bit shell shocked. I don't know if you pick it up in this story so much, but there is this one part where it says nobody dared ask, who are you? They knew it was Jesus. The fact that even comes up is important because what it says is they're still a little bit confused as to what's going on. They're still a little bit surprised that this has happened, you know? And look, they should be. That's weird. Right? Like, let's take a minute, forget the fact that Sunday school and church and all of this, and we're talking about a guy who died. So one of their best friends, their leader, especially for Peter, his best friend, their leader, the guy they thought was going to save the world, died. And then he raised again. Super weird. If that happened to you, you'd be like, is that really, are we sure that's him? Maybe I should, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure, you know? That's confusing. And Peter's all messed up. Peter's all messed up in this moment. He's got to be. First clue to that is he went back to fishing. right? And so if you like fishing, that's what you do when you're upset, right? You go fishing. But more than that, he thought that everything was going to be so different. See, Peter, first of all, thought that Jesus was going to be a Messiah in the mold of someone like King David, someone who would come back and restore Israel to its former glory, somebody that would make the nation of Israel strong again and save them from oppression. And Jesus died on a cross. That's confusing. Peter thought that he was going to stay with Jesus, like, no matter what. He even said it. Jesus, at the Last Supper, says to Peter, "You're going to deny me 3 times." And Peter says, No. That's not going to happen. These other losers over here, they might, but I'm not. I'm not going to do that. And he went out of his way to show that he was willing to fight for Jesus. Because in the Garden of Gethsemane, the Roman guards come with Judas, and they're about to arrest Jesus, and Peter pulls out his sword and cuts off his ear, a guard's ear, not Jesus' ear. Let me clarify. And craziest miracle in the whole Bible, Jesus picks up the ear and puts it back on. Don't you wish you could see that? That would be viral on YouTube. And so, you know, he's proven that he's willing to fight. And then Jesus says no, and he goes and he's arrested and he's on trial, and Peter's standing around a fire and he denies Jesus. So everything's messed up. Yeah, Jesus came back to life. Yeah, Jesus is still teaching this stuff that doesn't make any sense to him. But it's not what I thought it would be. And I'm not the man I thought I was going to be. Anybody been there? And so we find ourselves here. The first thing is this. Change needs a catalyst. Jesus showing back up is a moment that changes everything. So the reason that this is such a catalyst, because it says Jesus has come 3 other times. They knew he raised from the dead. They knew something's going on. But why is this a catalyst for Peter? Because Jesus is setting up a moment specifically for him. You ever been in a moment that just nobody else would really understand, but it was so important to you? Jesus is trying to do that for him. I had one of those recently. Maybe it's pretty easy to understand, actually, but I had one recently. But before I tell the story, you have to promise not to judge me or laugh at me. You work here. I can't do it. So here's what had happened. So the week of Thanksgiving, for like a month or something, my stomach was just messed up. Read into it what you want. And so the week of Thanksgiving was like a climax because I put butter on everything. And lots of we deep fried a turkey. I ate a lot of food, And so the Sunday after Thanksgiving, after eating my 3rd day's worth of stuffing, I'm laying in bed, and my wife, she's vegan, and she watches all the documentaries. You know what I'm saying? All these, they tell you that if you stop eating meat and you stop eating dairy and you never even smell milk again, then your life will be amazing, and angels will sing when you walk, and you'll be skinny and beautiful, And you'll even though you're 30 and you look like you're 65, you'll look like you're 15 when you're done. It's that whole thing. And she watches all of these, right? And there's a new one that came out on Netflix called Game Changers. And she's for weeks, she's been saying, will you watch this? Will you watch this? So Sunday night after Thanksgiving, I'm sure, I'll watch it. So we're laying in bed. And of course, I'm watching this documentary with her, and she falls asleep. But I'm look, I'm finishing this because we ain't doing this again. So, So then I'm laying there, and look, as soon as my head hit the bed, I got sick as a dog. Just, my stomach was all messed up, but then my nose, just congestion. It just like, you ever have one of those where it just comes on real fast? And then I started getting a fever. And when I get a fever, y'all, it's not pretty, and I become a child. I don't know why, but I shiver real bad when I get a fever, and it doesn't even have to be, it can be a little one, and I just start shivering. So I'm laying there like, can you give me my hoodie? And it's a mess, man. And like I said, just sick. And so I'm watching this documentary. She's beside me snoring, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I was up till like 3 a.m. at this point, like just because I had to pause the movie a lot. Like I said, read into it what you want. But so I paused the movie, and anyway, man, I'm sitting there, I'm sick, my stomach's jacked up, I'm not feeling good, and I'm watching a movie about veganism, and I'm just like, well, really, they say plant-based because some of these guys have dairy, and but they were athletes in this one, so. And they were talking about how they changed their diet, and now they're amazinger athletes. Not true. They didn't have a single Pro Bowler on that video, but there were some football players. But anyway, they all played for the Titans. So again, read into that one what you want. But I'm going, I got to do something because this is not working. I feel awful. I can't keep doing this. So I was like, shoot, my wife's vegan. I will never have to cook. And I just like, all right, cool. And I was just like, I'm not eating meat or dairy for a while. And because this is my catalyst, you know what I'm saying? This moment, laying in bed miserable, that's my catalyst. And so I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And we woke up the next morning, I told her, and she was super happy, and I don't have to cook anymore, so it's a win-win, I guess. I've been doing it for like almost a month, I guess, and I don't really miss meat that much, but that sounds weird. It's because I cheat. I just cheat on purpose. I plan it. So my birthday, we went to Mike's American Grill, and I got a steak. You know what I mean? And then my grandma's birthday, she was Korean, and so we go out and we get Korean, and so I got all of the pork and beef, right? So like in 4 weeks, I planned to cheat a couple times, and so I feel all right about it, I'm going to keep planning to cheat. I'm just not going to do it all the time. Anyway, we'll get back to that in a minute. Let's keep moving. None of you promised not to laugh at me, apparently. John 21:15. So we're picking back up. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him a third time, "Do you love me?" And Jesus said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." So what's going on here is Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And Jesus is reversing that. It's symbolic. He says, "Do you love me?" 3 times because he's telling Peter, look, dude, it's okay. When he asked the third time, it clicks. That's why it says Peter was hurt, because he asked the third time. It clicks for Peter, and Peter's like, oh, okay. Right? And look, this is important. Change requires grace. This is why I plan to cheat. You think it's funny, but it's working. And change requires grace. you've probably all been in a moment where you decided to change. Like, let's just go with the diet thing since we're talking about that. Everybody's done some sort of diet thing, and if you haven't, you've laughed at someone who did just now. Let's go with that, right? You've all done this. You go, I'm gonna go on a diet. And inevitably, you pick keto because you like bacon. No judgment. Right? You like bacon. It's the fad diet right now, and you can eat all the bacon. You just can't have the bread. No big deal, right? So I'm going to have all the bacon. And you keep going, and this is going well. It's going really well. It's going really well. And then it's your daughter's birthday, right? Or you go out with the family, and everybody wants pizza, right? Or just whatever. And then you mess up. And you're like, look, that cake was amazing. And you just get on this kick of there's this thing that happens, and you just believe that if you mess up once, it's all over, right? So life just does that to you. If you allow yourself to believe that a mistake can ruin everything, then it does. Does that make sense? Let me say it again. If you allow yourself to believe that one mistake can ruin everything, then it does. And so that's how most of us get derailed. That's how most of us just start messing up. I'm actually this way a lot. It's the only reason that I said, you know what, I'm going to plan to cheat because, well, there's two reasons. One is because the idea of never eating meat makes me want to cry. And two, I mean, that's just true. But two is because I've experienced this before. I'm not really a dieter. There's a couple, I love food. And so there's that. And then I watch everybody go through all the different fad diets and all the different things. And I watch everybody kind of just generally look the same. So I'm not really big into that. And so, but I do like to go work out, but see, here's the thing. I'm not really disciplined with my time, so a lot of times what happens is I go to the gym in the evening after having eaten like crap all day and having worked all day, and I'm exhausted. And then I go, and there's just this thing in my head, and if I show up, then I can check the box, and I'm successful. I'm good. Even if I just walk in, like slowly lift weights for 45 minutes and walk out, right? And I don't run. I don't like running. I hate running. So like for me, that's the way that this works. But if I can check the box off, then I've succeeded. But if I don't get to go in, I feel like a fat turd who's a failure, right? And I'm not trying to make fun of myself. Like that's legitimately how I feel. You've been there. And so it's this all or nothing thing. And it's really kind of a nothing or nothing thing if I go in the evening, because on the one hand, I barely do anything, and then on the other hand, I actually do nothing. But if I go in the morning, it becomes an all or nothing thing. And this is the problem with change. This is the problem with trying to develop good habits is what happens is it becomes all or nothing. We don't give ourselves any grace, and we mess it up. I'm not teaching anybody anything. We've all done this. Change requires grace. And Jesus understands that. Jesus gets that for Peter. Look, Peter is about to embark on a journey that is going to change the rest of human history. Pastor Mike mentioned this on Christmas Eve, but he didn't go into it really in detail. But you can remove this. Just don't judge me. Hear the whole thought. You can remove the spiritual and religious aspect from the life of Jesus, and that is still the most important historical event in all of human history. Everything changed. Because, see, here's the thing. After Jesus, Christianity spreads everywhere. If you don't believe in God, that's fine. It's still spread everywhere. You can't change that. And then for most of the last 2 millennia, the Catholic Church is the most powerful entity on the face of the earth. It changed everything, right? And Peter is the linchpin. Peter's the linchpin. And Peter's going to need a lot of grace because guess what? He's going to mess up 3 or 4 or 5 or a dozen more times. He's going to mess up in big ways, big enough ways that it ends up in this book twice. The Pentecost happens, 3,000 people get saved. It's very obvious that this movement that Jesus is trying to start, that this life change is for everyone. Because at Pentecost, in Acts chapter 2, they start speaking all different languages, right? So it's obvious this is for everybody. But then Peter falls back into his old habits, and he only is ministering to the Jews. And what happens? Well, in a dream, he sees this like just amazing feast, but it's got food on it he's not allowed to eat. And a voice from heaven says, eat. And so Peter now has to realize, oh, this is for everybody all over again. And he goes to this guy, Cornelius' house, and he meets him, and this guy gets saved. He's a Gentile. He's not a Jew, but he becomes a Christian. And then it happens all over again on there's a whole debate over circumcision, and we won't go into it too far because I don't want to make any of the guys uncomfortable. I just said the word and somebody flinched, but there's this whole debate over circumcision, and Peter is siding with the people that believe that to become a Christian, you have to get circumcised. And Paul's like, are you kidding me? See, Peter forgets it 2 times that are big enough that they end up in this book. He's going to need a lot of grace. Change is going to take time. Right? Let's keep moving. So Jesus has just finished what he was saying. Jesus had just said, feed my sheep to Peter. In verse 18, very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your arms, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter will glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me. Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved was following him. This is the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and said, Lord, who is going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? Peter answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. Because of this, the rumor spread among the believers that this disciple would not die, but Jesus did not say that he would not die. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? This is the disciple who testifies to these things and who wrote them down. We know that his testimony is true. Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would have to be written. So, first of all, what that last part is saying is that John wrote the book. John is the disciple that Jesus loved. A little bit conceited to write that in your own book. Let's just get that out of the way, right? But the last thing, or not the last thing, but second to last thing is this. Change requires resolve. You see, Jesus lays it out for him right there. He lays it out for him plain and simple. If you do this, if you follow me again, if you step into the leadership role that I have set aside for you, you are going to die for it. And ultimately, we know that Peter, he did step into that role, and he did die for it. But the point being, change requires resolve. That's a big choice that Peter had to make right there. And when we are going through times of change, sometimes we have to be resolved on the end, right? Be resolved on where this is all headed. We have to be okay we have to have the end game in mind. So it starts like this. You have a catalyst. There's something that makes you want to change. What do we call that in real life? I just use catalyst because it sounded good, but what do we call it? We call that motivation, right? Change typically starts with something that motivates you. it catalyzes action, right? It makes you do something. And so it starts with something that motivates you. What's the problem with motivation? It's temporary. It doesn't stick around. You're not often motivated for a long time, right? And there are days when other feelings will overtake your motivation. So what do you do when you don't have motivation? Typically, what we often do is we mess up. The motivation goes away, and we just go, man, I give up. So in that moment, after you give up, what do you need? You need grace. You need to have grace with yourself. You need to say, hey, look, I just got to keep chugging. This happened. I got to move on, right? But you have to move from the need for motivation to a mind and a heart that is resolved on the end product, on the end solution, on where you want to go. That's the journey that Jesus is taking Peter on. And this is probably one of the most important conversations in the Bible when you think about our context. Because the way that this plays out, this conversation directly has a direct line from this conversation to us. Thank God that Peter was able to make the turn. And the last point is this, and it just kind of caps off the thing. It's change takes more than a moment. Your motivation is going to be momentary. It takes more than that. And so, New Year's Eve is coming up, New Year's Day is coming up, and you're gonna decide on lots of things that are gonna change your life in small ways and in big ways. And even those of us that act like we don't make New Year's resolutions, it's because we always screw them up, so we just don't tell people. There's always something that we think, man. Why? Because it's the beginning of a new year. It feels like new things are coming. So we want to change. We want to see something different. I have a problem with it, though. We spend all of our time on trivial things. We want to change things that aren't eternal. Typically, New Year's resolutions are the things I've covered today. I'm going to stop. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to move more. I'm going to stop smoking. Look, I'm not saying that they don't matter. I'm just saying you can die fat or you can die skinny, but you're still going to die. What matters is what you do with your life. And I think maybe God has something next year that's bigger for us than a fad diet. I think there are more important things than wasting $500 in the next year on a gym membership that gets used from January to March. Right? I think, man, what would it look like if we just decided that the next year we were going to give it to Jesus? And you may look at me and be like, I already did that. I'm saved and I'm a Christian. You're a little late to the game. I don't mean that. I don't mean what would it look like if you believed in Jesus for the next year. I mean, what would it look like if you acted like you believed in Jesus for the next year? I think, I know what it would look like, actually. Your marriage would get better, your family life would get better, the people around you would wonder what's wrong with you, but also want to be more like you because they see God in you. You would have more money, and not because God pours out his blessing in some strange mystical spell. You would have more money because you'd stop wasting it on things you don't need. You'd stop wasting all your money trying to make yourself feel better. You would enjoy more time with your kids. You would I don't know, some of y'all would probably change career fields. it would look better. It would just look better. Your priorities would be right. It wouldn't happen immediately, but you see, that's the whole point of this. Change doesn't happen immediately. It takes time. New Year's is coming. Let that be a catalyst. Decide you're going to do something different. Decide you're going to focus on Jesus. Decide that you're going to live the next year of your life trying to look more like him, trying to be more like him, trying to give up the things that you've been holding on to that hold you back from being the man or the woman that God created you to be. And I'm not talking about the do's and the don'ts. I'm talking about there's something. There's a fear that holds you back. There's something bigger than your potty mouth that you need to change. And you're going to mess up. And it will happen on January 2nd. Peter left Jesus alone in his greatest time of need. That's a personal offense. And Jesus sought out Peter. He'll seek you out too. So have grace when you mess up. Have grace with yourself. Accept the grace given to you by God. Accept the grace that Jesus paid for in blood. Move on and be resolved to live more in the purpose that God has for you. I just think that we leave so much on the table because we focus on things that don't have lasting value. So just think about it. What would this year look like if you gave it to Jesus? Can I pray for you? All right. God, I just want to say thank you. First of all, thank you for sending your son to die for us. Thank you for raising him again. And God, thank you for giving us the opportunity to live a life that is fulfilled and a life that is spent worshiping you and following you and living in your purpose. God, I pray two things. I pray, first of all, that for anybody that's not sure, I pray that you would keep that question in their mind. What would it look like if I gave the next year to Jesus? And God, I also pray that leaving here, that we can have some resolve, that we can give ourselves some grace, and God, that man, if nothing else, that this day is a day that you use as a catalyst for change in our lives. And Lord, I pray that when we get to this time next year, we look back and say, wow, look at what God did. You know, not that we're proud of ourselves because we have better habits or we've been more disciplined or blah, 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 blah. God, no, that when we get a year from today and we look back, we don't praise ourselves, we praise you because you did things in the last year that are so much more and so much bigger and so much greater and so much more fulfilling than we could ever do on our own. More than anything, God, just walk with us. Let us feel your presence. And ultimately, let us be the men and the women that you created us to be. Amen.
Thank you again for joining us. We hope that this resource helped you in your journey towards knowing God, finding freedom, discovering your purpose, and making an impact. Just so you know a little more about us, we're New Life, a church making a significant impact in every community we serve. We meet every weekend in multiple locations around the Washington, D.C. Metroplex and online several times throughout the week. If you want to connect, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or you can download our app from your favorite app store. You can even watch our services on your Apple TV or Roku. Just search for newlife.live and all of our content will be right there. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, share it with your friends, or even take a screenshot and share it on your social stories and tag us. Lastly, we just wanted to give a special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It's because of you that this is possible. If you'd like to learn more about how to partner with us financially, just visit newlife.live/give for more information. That's newlife.live/give for more information. We appreciate anything you can do to help. Thanks for being a member of our online family. We love making a significant impact with you.